Welcome to Smalls Talks Balls, presented by Champions Round. And now your host, Steph Smalls.
What is up, everyone? It's already Tuesday. How did that happen so fast? We're back on Smalls Talks Balls. We're wrapping up the NFC North. And to do that, we have to talk about the Minnesota Vikings. As you can tell, I have my purple on. I also have the voice of the Vikings. Vikings play-by-play for 20 years. KFAN. I mixed up the letters there. Since 98. Paul Allen, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty well. Good to meet you, Stephanie. WFAN, from a heritage standpoint, that was certainly one of the first sports talk radios. KFAN is my station, and it's where I've been full-time since 98, like you said. But I don't really have much Mike and the Mad Dog to me. So we'll just see where this goes.
And I mean, but it's not, you do racetrack, you do everything almost at this point. Betting, you can get into betting if you want to do it. But we'll have to talk some Vikings. Let's talk about the draft. I'll start there. But tell me your feelings, like just your first reaction. How did this draft go? We got a new regime in there. I have my opinions, but I'd love to hear yours.
Well, I'd like to begin with a question, if you don't mind. I mean,
okay, good. Please take over, because he knows now I'm all flustered. And go ahead.
No, that's good, because I get flustered too. Off you and I setting this up, we both have the long-winded gene. So, I'm going to make sure that I'm going to try to be as pithy and as truncated in thought and delivery as possible. So let me get this question out quickly. What's your action tonight? I mean, I started following you on Twitter because of the provocative and antithetical nature to some of these parlays you put together. So, because I had an opinion tonight on Carolina and the Rangers, and I think it's 2-0 Rangers at the end of one from when we're taping this. But Carolina is unbeatable in Raleigh with all those belt buckles in the stands. Yeah. Now, when they go on the road, that speed's not necessarily traveling. So tell me you're on your beloved Rangers tonight.
Of course, I can't stop. I'm an addict at this point. It's like, you're going to get hurt. And I guess this is kind of New York sports as a whole. I'm a Nets fan. Not that the Knicks are much better. But then the Rangers are kind of giving me this. We've got a little bit of hope here. The Yankees are hanging on there. I can't stop betting the money line. I'm ridiculous at this point. I can't get enough. I think even the first game too, they're in it the whole time, fighting till the end. But that's why I don't get too excited. I'm sure I will regret letting my hair down and hitting the money line again. They're on my no bet money line list, but here we are again.
Yeah, these when you get to the National Hockey League playoffs, at least I've seen for many, many years. You're supposed to be able to look at certain things and they immediately are almost in the blind unders because of the way the refs call the games and the tightly contested nature of the no tomorrow scenario and just overall with the National Hockey League. But I mean, it's just been the whole season has just been 6-3 and 7-4 and 7-3. It just, the scores have been so high.
They're crazy. The totals are crazy. I can't even touch them because they make me too nervous.
Well, yeah. Then, it's like in this series between Calgary and Edmonton, they set you up to be a sucker because, it's like 9-6, then all of a sudden it's like a 13 goal between them situation. So then they go to Edmonton, and you're like, all right, go ahead and put a 6.5 on this game. I dare you. And the sucker finishes 4-1. So are you kidding me with all this? Holy cow.
Yes. They're making fools of us. That's what it is. It's fools. They're making fools of us. I feel like I told myself, I think after this year, too, even with the NBA playoffs, I'm done. I can't keep betting it because every time, whether it's Marcus Smart or whoever wants to do it, they always screw me. I get this faith in them, and they end up hurting my feelings. They do it every freaking time.
Well, Smalls, if you're a Brooklyn Nets fan and you were investing significantly, then you went broke about a month and a half ago.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've been broke a while. I mean, if it's not the Giants, it's the Nets. Someone's breaking my heart at this point. If not, it's not a man or the Nets or the Giants. I know lots of disappointment.
With the National Football League, to your draft related question, Stephanie.
Yeah.
And speaking of the New York Giants, I'm tripping right now. Who's the head coach? The new coach?
Dable, who is now 4-0 if he goes to he's at the Rangers games. 4-0. Go to the Rangers games.
BFF with Belichick around the draft, that whole thing. But I read something this morning. The games don't count yet, obviously, and that's a big factor with the way people are treating things, because I'm reading quotes from Giants organized team activities, and it's just a breath of fresh air, and a bubble is popped, and everybody's happy to be with each other, and we're all looking each other in the eyes in the hallways and saying, "Good morning, how are you? Family doing well?" And with Mike Zimmer as the coach here, and Mike and I are friends. Mike has the gruff gene, so I mean, Mike might be the crankiest human being in the world, and if he doesn't look you in the eyes in the hallways of Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center, don't take it personally. It's nothing personal; it's business. But we, with our new coach Kevin O'Connell and a completely new staff and new general manager and some new players, we've heard a lot of the same things here. It's just this time of the year, you hear a lot of how refreshing a lot of things are, and I'm sure they are.
Oh, yes.
Until they start playing the games, and then you take a dirty loss at the wire, or you beat somebody as an 8-point dog, and nobody thought you could win, and then you're like this, like, look at this.
Yeah.
It's fast. The personalities in this game are fascinating.
The building, it's a different feeling in the building all of a sudden, and everyone's so excited. And then the players all love their quarterback. They all love them also. Yeah. In the off season, everyone loves everyone. There's not a negative thing to be said. You can make a story out of anywhere. You look at Traylon Burks is coughing, and now it's like he can't keep up during practice. No, the allergies are bad, guys. The pollen count is ridiculous this summer. Give the kid a break. You're making a story out of nothing. We don't need to make stories out of nothing. I think that even with the trade, right? The Vikings made quite a trade there. It was aggressive. It definitely was. Yeah. But in a sense, is it aggressive because they wanted their guy, or what? What was it? What do you think it was?
Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, he's with Andrew Berry, Kevin Stefanski. Now, Kevin Stefanski, he's one of the best friends that I've had, A, in my life, but B, in the 20 some odd seasons I've called Viking football. Kevin, was there for a decade and a half of it, and I just love him, and I know how he operates, and so I chatted with him about Kwesi right as Kwesi got here. Nothing but rave reviews. Kwesi's very smart. And before the Browns, he was working in analytics with the Niners. So now you got Lynch and next level Shanny, as we call him around here, Kyle Shanahan. And before that, he was trading commodities with Morgan Stanley. So he has the trading gene. He's incredibly smart. And the thing I liked about our draft, and really, until they start playing the games and we get about 20, 25 into each of them, that's when I think it's fair to analyze the who, what, where, when, and why. Kwesi's not afraid to take a stand. I like that in people, specifically this day and age where a lot of things are wishy-washy. So the trade back with the Lions, it per any chart you look at, whether it's old school Jimmy Johnson, this new Rich Hill thing that people turn me on to, whatever, it does seem that we left void a late third round, early fourth round pick, and Kwesi seemed to be okay with that. I also believe the Vikings did like Alabama receiver Jamison Williams. So therefore, they're going to have to be okay with that. Lewis Seen, the safety from Georgia, is exactly who they identified at the Lions pick, which would be 30 or 31, one of the two. And, but what a sweat. I mean, you trade in the division, and then you got to sweat 2 hours real time as the picks go down, hoping nobody snipes your guy. So then you get into Green Bay, from what I understand, wanted that spot to take the North Dakota State University wide receiver Christian Watson. And so therefore they wanted to come up to the end of Thursday. And from what I understand, Kwesi was like, I ain't giving you that fifth-year option. So if you want to move, go ahead and call us tomorrow. Well, they did. And then, we traded a prized pick to the absolute team to beat in the division. That is void of receivers, has jacked up its receiver situation over the last 3 years. For whatever the reason, didn't take one receiver in 2020 when we got JJ in the greatest receiver draft in the history of the NFL. And we put them in a spot to get who they wanted, but that's okay, because here's the taking the stand. So we end up getting a couple of second rounders out of the equation. So Kwesi really looked at it like from 36 to 77, where we had a lot of picks. That's where you wanted to be. So again, he took a stand. Now he's got to be right.
I kind of like it too. It's almost like he had the cojones, right? Like my grandma would say, like the cojones to just be like, Green Bay wants this guy, Lions want this guy. That's fine. I know what I'm doing. I have looked at this process. I have decided that analytically and from, and then the trade, this is the whole thing too, which cracks me up because I see a lot of it is you really don't know the first, second, third year, you start realizing how someone's draft went. Like that doesn't, there's this immediate reaction from the fan bases, from the media. You don't actually know entirely what you got. Like, for example, Andrew Booth. Andrew Booth was graded by a lot of very well-respected guys as a first-round value. I think Andrew Booth might end up going down as one of those steals. He might end up looking like a complete steal. I think he had that injury, but I think he had one of the higher football IQs. And also, you guys addressed an immediate need. That secondary was not great. It was a problem. It's frustrating to watch. I will not even bring up my Cam Taylor's one of the harder football players to watch. He frustrates the hell out of me. But really, I think at least you're addressing needs. I think that Kwesi is looking at it as, let's look at the big picture. How do we get from here to what's our end goal? Is next year a Super Bowl, or can we put ourselves in a position where maybe next year isn't a Super Bowl, but we either get the wild card, we make a decent run at the division, and then we look at what happens next year. And I think that he's being very thoughtful and intentional with his movements, which is maybe a different feel than I think I've felt from the Vikings as of late.
Well, when you have the background and you have the acumen, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah does, then I'm going to have to bet that when it comes to the trades and the value, he's not going to lose too many of those. Now, the first rounder with Detroit is I do believe that we overpaid. But, they one smart thing, one of many smart things about Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell, the new head coach, is Kwesi right after the draft, and Kevin on my radio show 9 to noon on KFAN the next morning, they basically conceded, guys, ladies, we know we overpay. Okay. So, I mean, if they're conceding it, then where do you go from there with it? It's like what Kwesi put it was, you don't always get to pay exactly what you want to pay for a car or for a house. Sometimes you got to pay what the other person wants, but you want the property so badly that you're going to pay what it takes to get it. And that's what they did. Now, of this offensive lineman from LSU at Ingram, the guard spot for the most part with the Minnesota Vikings for quite some time has kind of been the land of 10,000 misfits. Ezra Cleveland, second-round pick Boise State a few years ago, Ezra came into it as a tackle, and then they worked him at guard on the fly, and he got good last year. So left guard is solidified finally, and you can win with Ezra. So now on the right side, you have Chris Reed, played with Indy last year, played with the Jag, played at Mankato in Minnesota collegiately. Jesse Davis played a bunch of games for the Dolphins. Wyatt Davis, who was a third-round pick by the Vikings last year, he was Big Ten Offensive Lineman of the Year in 2020 or 2021, and man, we just didn't see anything close to that. He got hurt too, so I should, let's be fair with that. And they have Ed Ingram, the rookie from LSU. So the conversation up to training camp, Stephanie, I can tell is going to be, if you draft somebody in the second round, they're supposed to start. Specifically, you've had a void at right guard for a while. So I think that storyline is going to be really good.
I do too. And I think that you nailed it. And that was probably the next thing I was going to bring up to you, is that right guard position has kind of been like almost quietly, probably not for Vikings fans, I know that, but maybe from an NFL fan standpoint, like the right guard position's been really weak for a while. And now you have 4 to 5 guys that are going to go into camp. And this time it's like, I think you're going to come out with a guy that is really can solidify and spark a fire at that position. And then you actually put a not even just a Band-Aid, like you could probably get a decent starter at right guard, which again, you haven't had. So I think you see he was very aware of what the weaknesses were on this roster, and he went out and made sure that even if it is at camp, he's finding a place to be able to fill those holes that have, you know, not plagued this team. Because again, and that's the misconception. The Vikings are a good football team and above good. They've been a good football team. The problem is they have all this talent, and you got to get them past that. They need like just a little like butt tap. We got to get over this secondary, the right guard, and all the things that are plaguing it. And some people, you know, Vikings fans are not very forgiving. You guys it's a rough bunch over there.
Oh, it's a good fan base. Yeah.
But it's awesome.
I came here from Northern California as a racetrack announcer from Washington, D.C. So when they were the Redskins, yeah, I lived in Anacostia in D.C., which was right by RFK Stadium. So, I mean, I know that fan base when that squad was good at RFK. Mm-hmm. I know what a good fan base looks like. And this fan base here, they sell it out all the time. TV ratings are up there around 70% of TVs in the state. Our KFAN Vikings Radio Network numbers are really good on a game-by-game basis. So the fans here, you know, they're not apathetic. They can have vitriol and they can have angst and they can get mad, but they covet exaltation and they covet a joy of just loving their team and having reason to love their team. It's pretty simple in nature. And, you know, with Kevin O'Connell, there's one thing with training camp approaching that I was thinking of today, but also when Sean McVay began with the St. Louis Rams in 2017, in his very first draft, he got Cooper Kupp in the 3rd round. So, you know, I'm certainly not saying Jalen Naylor from East Lansing. You might know more about him than me. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that he's going to be that guy because he's a receiver. But with McVay, a lot of the positivity and a lot of the outside of moving to California, you know, where everybody wants to play, hitting on Cooper with that pick, I mean, what a great way to start running as a first-year head coach. So I'm curious to see if we hit on somebody like that in the middle of the draft. Not necessarily in the middle, Stephanie, but we got this linebacker safety hybrid named Brian Asamoah. And when I was at rookie camp, physically speaking, I mean, I've seen Adrian Peterson, I've seen Danielle Hunter, I've seen Percy Harvin. You know, and man, this guy, the way he's built, holy cow! And he's fast and he's mean and you know, so like I'm curious to see what they're going to do with him because it's everything here is so new. And when we line up against Green Bay, first game of the season, US Bank Stadium, I believe the base defense is going to be 3-4, and we haven't had 3-4 as a base defense here in 40 years. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to repeatedly run the 3-4 at you. There'll be some 4-3 and some 3-3-5 and unique nickel looks. But when you draft Lewis Cine and you do the trade the way you do, because that's exactly who you want to pair him with Harry the Hitman, Harrison Smith. Well, that means you're low-key conceding that a strength of our defense is our safeties. Now, if safeties lead teams in tackles, and I'm getting ready for a game, I generally think, wow, that means a lot of Saquon Barkleys are getting deep in the secondary and the safeties have to save the day. But then you look back at some of the better 3-4s over the last 20 years, specifically with Polamalu in Pittsburgh and Donatel recently with Denver with Vic Fangio and what they do with their safeties, honestly is antithetical to anything I've seen defensively in quite some time. And with Harrison Smith, who has HOF potential, and Cine, big, fast, and smart, that really, really excites me. And it's going to have to excite us because, I mean, we gave Green Bay the NDSU guy who they wanted, and we gave the Lions the Alabama guy who they wanted. So we better be able to rush and we better be able to cover, because if we don't, then it's going to make my hair like all crazy and just.
Oh, yes. We're going to need more headbands. It's going to.
My tongue in an electric socket because.
I freaking love it. I love it. I love it. But I think smart is like the perfect word, because even going back yesterday when I was looking over the draft again, I'm like, let me just look at this. I think the consistent thing that I could come up with is that they all have a very high football IQ. They're all very smart players.
Great observance.
They're very, very, they're guys you want in your locker room. They're all guys that, the knocks on them, because you can't say this with every player, like their cons are things that you can learn, because you cannot coach everything. Some things you can't coach. I think all of their draft players. So I think that the Vikings draft, we're going to say in 2 years, oh, wow, everyone laughed at it. But was it as dumb as you guys think? Like, it was very, very crazy on day 1, day 2. And, they pulled a fast one. It was a masterclass in the Vikings. Maybe, yeah. I think with that first trade, they're probably going to be a little bit more value. But I think there's a plan in place. And I think you look at the NFC North and you're seeing even some of these other teams, like the Lions, for example. I'm starting to see a little bit more of a plan in place. How do we add depth to our team so that we're not making guys that are not number ones, that are not number twos, like play in the place that they should be, and that you highlight their strengths? Tell me about the NFC North. What are we feeling about the rest of this division? Because things are getting weird. And the NFC North is playing the NFC East, and like they're kind of very similar divisions. And it's going to be a weird season a little bit between these two.
Well, your observation about the type of players Kwesi drafted, and it was sharp because Kwesi. It was very important to Kwesi to get scholars of the game. So if you read, no matter what report you read. And for me, former Viking safety Corey Chavis has a release called Draft Nasty, and he's the preeminent. He doesn't publicize, and he's not loud on Twitter. Corey's sharp, and Draft Nasty kind of is an inside periodical. The majority of our players had scholar of the game next to it. Andrew Booth, 3-time ACC All-Academic.
Every time, yeah.
Right. Yeah, a lot of that with a lot of our players. So I noticed that initially too. As the division goes, when I was at the Combine doing my radio show for 2 days and looking at the picks the Lions had, and, I know there eventually ended up being a trade. This is not because we lost to them last year in ridiculous fashion with Amon-Ra St. Brown getting behind Cam Dantzler back left to the end zone. It was ridiculous.
I was there. It was my first Lions Vikings. It was my first Lions game. I know, but you know what I did? I'll be honest with you.
Wow.
I had my Vikings jersey on, and I had my Giants. I had my Giants starter. And when I knew it was happening, I slipped back in. I'm like, oh, there's my old lover. And I slipped back into my Giants starter jacket. And I'm like, I don't know anyone here.
Yeah, that's just when you reside in Heartbreak Central. You're breaking hearts all over the place. You don't even know you're breaking them. And we broke your heart that day, and we don't even know you. So that game, and then when they were at US Bank Stadium, crappy game, boring game. We did a lot to jack that thing up. Alexander Madison fumbled very late. They get into the end zone. They get the 2-point conversion in a game. Quintez Cephas gets hurt, and I'm a fan of Quintez Cephas, by the way. But then Cousins drives them down the field, and we walk off a winner from 50 and change, Greg Joseph. But the Dan Campbell, once you get past the biting of the knees bit, the kneecap bit, and the histrionics and the hyperbole and everything, when you have Penei Sewell and Taylor Decker as your bookending tackles, and Frank Ragnow might be the best center in the NFL. They up until this year, they honestly hadn't had a good linebacker playing for that team that I can remember since Chris Spielman. And Jelani Tavai, you can have him. Teddy Lehman was undersized, and so on. I like what they're doing with that team. And if they can get Okudah to play at least half the games, I said at the Combine, you guys can laugh at me all you want and think that it's, the crappy Motor City Kitties like we expect every single year. That ain't the case. And I saw it in our games last year, how they just never stopped. And what the Lions get from Jared Goff is exactly what McVay got from Jared Goff, who took them to the Super Bowl. So the Lions are a factor. The Bears, with the omissions of Akeem Hicks and Eddie Goldman and Khalil Mack, Eddie Jackson fell off last year. I'm not exactly sure why. Their corners need work, but I do like the Utah kid, Jalen Johnson.
Yes, I do too.
So I don't know what to think of the Bears. I think their offensive line needs some work. As long as 12 is in uniform, they're the team to beat in the division. I don't care who their receivers are. LaFleur's a high-end coach, specifically in the regular season. But if I'm Matt, and I've gotten to know Matt a little bit over the last year, and I certainly wouldn't say this to him unless prompted, but it's Matt, and either Matt or the staff, they've gotten the team to a certain point, like 2 years ago in that NFC title game against Tom Brady, and Matt took the gun out of 12's hands, and they kicked a field goal, and it pissed him off, and then there was a bunch of crap in the offseason. Well, last year, that Niners debacle happens in the divisional round, and the fourth quarter, man, I mean, to not tell Aaron, bro, you can't throw to Devontae every single time because they know you just can't force it. Or it just seemed like there was a breakdown in communication there. That's a problem. So getting around all that may be a little more problematic than some people think. Aaron obviously has a big personality, but then you get to us. So the Vikings can win the division. Green Bay should be favored to win the division. I don't know what the season total is on the Lions, but I think they're going to win 7 or more. And then you got the Bears with Fields, and I don't know what to think about them.
Yeah, I know. And with the Lions number, at least has moved. I think I got it at one point when they first opened. It was about 4.5, 5. Now it's up to 6.5, which is.
You got the Lions at 4.5.
I think it was 4.5.
Damn, small.
Right away. I also have the Vikings to make the play. I think the Vikings could easily walk away with this division. I think that the one thing that Green Bay probably has is that they've invested a lot into this defense. If they finish as a top 3, top 5 defense, it's not going to be shocking. They got 2 of my favorite defensive players with those first 2 picks. I think that fantastic. I think that they found a very nice compliment there to their linebacker already, and they're in a good spot to have their defense really solidified. And it might be a better, I keep saying this too, I think Davante Adams leaving, could be almost better because of the fact that he's so honed in on Devontae. He can't get his eyes off. It's like he was only giving the ball to Devontae, and I think that they saw, even when Devontae was on the field, though, which is interesting, it's like they're 7-0. There were 31.5 points per game without Devontae. It's not that they can't win without Devontae. It's just that's who Aaron, he trusts, and that's his guy. And I think that you might see this committee by receiver or deal by wide receiver. We know, Aaron, you said big person. He can be a little bit of a brat. I will call him a brat as I can, because you don't have to do that, but I will. He's a little bit of a brat. And we've seen history has shown us that he doesn't love young receivers that just come in. It's not really his thing. So does Lazard end up stepping up? Do we get some life out of Amari Rodgers? I don't know. It does, even Jones end up taking on a little bit more receiving work, maybe. But I actually think the Vikings could end up being that team to really beat if they can pull things together. It's going to depend too a lot on which, we'll get Kirk Cousins, right? This guy, poor Kirk Cousins. I love me some Kirk Cousins. I'll be honest with you.
Why think that poor Kirk Cousins?
I just feel like everyone's so rough on him.
The Rangers 3, Carolina 0 at the end of the second period. Go Mark Messier, go Ron Duguay, and go Brady Shea's former team for Stephanie Smalls.
Oh my God, please. Well, my money line finally hit. Do it, because I do it. I always bet it the wrong freaking night. So hopefully Dable must be there, because I did bet it again. I do it every night. It's ridiculous. Katie Nolan liked she liked my tweet, and it felt like a sign that I had to keep betting the Rangers. So that's what I do. I got to keep the New York in me. All I've got left right now is the Rangers, the Yankees, and hoping Shane can pull something out of this freaking team that has been breaking my heart, which is why I've been so seduced by the Vikings lately. I'm like, I feel like I'm cheating on my team, but I just think there's lots to like about the Vikings, and everyone can sue. But what's funny is, I'll tell you, because I've been doing the NFC North, right? I'm going through all 32 of these teams, and it seems like, because I had the finale of this division, and no one's scared of the Vikings. Why? Is it because of years? What is it? Why is no one scared of the Vikings?
Well, I mean, if you know, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and be shit talking announcer. But I mean, I'm just going to be realistic about this entire thing. We beat them at US Bank Stadium last year, and we went to Lambeau and didn't have Cousins. Now, we also went through a season where a bunch of people ended up getting fired. So, you know, again, with Mike Zimmer and a lot of the coaches on that staff, I'm friends of theirs and fans of theirs. And, you know, it doesn't matter whether I agree or disagree with things from the offseason, last season, or this season. None of that matters. All I know is Cousins has gotten better every single season.
Yeah.
Right. So, you know, he gets here 2018 with he had the audacity to take a fully guaranteed 3-year deal. Like Smalls, Biggs, no, everybody would do that. So, but now he has a target on his back, specifically in a rather simplistic state like Minnesota that has a blue collar feel to it, and they don't really know that much about him. In his first season, we had a bad coordinator situation. John DeFilippo, the first-year coordinator, after winning the Super Bowl with Philly, he didn't even make it the entire season. He got fired. And quite honestly, Kevin Stefanski should have been the offensive coordinator into the season, and he wasn't. So then Kevin takes over 3/4 of the way through, and we start running for 200 a game with Dalvin. Now with Kirk, he was throwing pick sixes that season, right to Minkah Fitzpatrick when he played for Miami, P.J. Williams for New Orleans. I mean, it wasn't great. And in 2019, he got better. Likewise, 20, 21. And last year, we had a run where we were losing every single time in the final minute of the game. I mean,
yeah, it was awful.
It was ridiculous. I mean, I couldn't believe some of these things that were happening.
Oh.
And then
it was great because I have it tight because then the Giants were doing it too. So I got to watch it twice a day.
Oh, masochism. Pure masochism. So then we go to Charlotte, and Zimmer's defense could not make Sam Darnold look any worse. I mean, he was horrible. But now all of a sudden he's back at his 4 or his 6, and we're going to win. And just Robbie Anderson, Ian Thomas, Robbie. Dantzler lets Robbie Anderson get out of bounds. And now all of a sudden they score and they get a 2-point conversion with Robbie Anderson, and the freaking thing's tied. And it's like, oh my God, where did that come from? But in patented Cousins fashion last year, he leads us down the field, hits KJ Osborne front left of the end zone. It was cold-blooded, and we walk off winners. But there were like 8 games last year, or whatever it was, in the final 8 minutes of the game, 7 or 8 minutes of the game. You couldn't be any better than Kirk Cousins was. You just couldn't. He was phenomenal. He was cold-blooded. He was bootlegging beautifully. He was shaking off players in the pocket. So now Cousins, the Cousins narrative, it's tired. I mean, he's a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. If you're looking for him to improvise like Patrick Mahomes, it ain't gonna happen. If you're looking for him to lift up the knee like Peyton Manning and ready and call the whole thing at the line, that ain't gonna happen either. He is who he is. A lot of things have to work in dot connecting fashion. A to B to C. Protection needs to be good. By the way, Christian Darrisaw at left tackle and Brian O'Neill at right, that ain't bad. It's one of the 5 best tackle tandems in the NFL already. But Cousins is fine. The hatred or the vitriol that he receives, I think the narrative is tired.
Oh, it's exhausting. And I think part of it too, I don't know if this is like a younger generation thing or what it is, but all of a sudden we are so addicted to these flashy names, mobile quarterbacks that make these ridiculous plays, and everyone forgets that you actually don't need that to win games. You need someone reliable that has a good arm, that is accurate and consistent. And I know that very well in Eli Manning. I remember being at games when I was younger, them chanting, we want a DNA test because Peyton's not your brother. This is not a Manning. I mean, they had signs, like they were ready to get rid of him. But when it came down to it, yes, did Eli need a little bit more? Like it needs to be like this, this, and this, and then we get something. Sure. But I think you're also paying for the consistency. You're getting guys that play almost every. I mean, Kirk missed just one this year because of COVID, and I think outside of that, he missed one like maybe a couple of years ago. But he's a very consistent guy. Yeah. Eli was the same way, never missed a game. And there's something to that. So if you can build a nice team around them, it doesn't have. He will get the job done. That's okay. Everyone, calm down. Leave Kirk Cousins alone because. It's ridiculous.
The Giants fans, I mean, they're Giants fans, okay? It's the New York stereotype. I get it. I've called a million games there. I've called games at Lincoln Financial. Philly fans, I mean, it's the booing the Santa Claus bit. That's the old tripe.
Oh my God,
it's worse
they're
than
awful.
I mean, the anger and just the lascivious nature of that fan base can be a little overwhelming. But if Giants fans don't remember or hearken, let's see. So that would be about 15 years ago. From the wild card run of win Super Bowl, how much money you made on the money line on the Giants every single game with Eli, and then through those Super Bowl runs, if you can't remember that, well, then there's no hope for you because I'm in the camp. Eli Manning is a Hall of Fame quarterback. You do not become a two-time Super Bowl MVP and win the road games that he had a big part in winning without becoming a Hall of Famer. And, you know, it just – and I know you're really into fantasy football and fantasy sports, and I appreciate and respect that about you. But the fantasy football generation and mindset people take, it's like if they ain't leading you to a daily victory on every Sunday or Thursday through Monday – or leading your team to a fantasy championship in the regular season, then they're not worth much. Where you regular season for show, you postseason for dough. Just like Stephanie Smalls.
I love that.
Regular season for show money line Eli for dough at like age 9.
Yes,
I love it because it'll pay for college.
Exactly. I actually paid off the rest of my loans on Gronk first CD a couple of years ago in the Super Bowl. That's how I paid off. Yeah, I had to though. I went to University of Arizona. Yeah. And then that's how I got my gambling addiction. No.
Right.
Well, I'm part of it, but no, Eli Manning. You know, have someone. I always ask when people try to argue with me with this, and this is supposed to be about the Vikings, and I'm going in and talking about the Giants, but. Tell me how you write NFL history without Eli Manning. You can't because then you start talking about Brady, and you can't talk about Brady without talking about those losses. And that's where I don't know if you even know this. I'll give you a fun fact. So I have 3 L's in Steffi Smalls. And they're Tom Brady's 3 L's because 2 are from my Eli Manning and 1 is from my Nick Foles, who I went to college with. So again, you can't write history without those games and Tom Brady's losses. That's part of the NFL. And you're right in that. And this is something I'm actually super passionate about, is that fantasy football is definitely, you know, it's taking a hit on just fandom in general. That's why seats start filling up as much. This is why no one really watches the games the way they used to. It's like, let's red zone 4 different televisions and buy jerseys from different, there's not as much of this, like I was born and raised. I mean, it was like Sunday, spaghetti and meatballs, you're sitting on the couch, no one's talking, we're watching the Giants and you're shutting up. But there's not as much of that. And that takes away from this, like, if you're not getting someone 27 points per game in their fantasy, I hate you, got to go, time to go. And you're not as forgiving with quarterbacks either.
Well, with Cousins and, you know, to a large extent, our fan base, but I guess maybe football fans in general, you know, and I would see a lot of this via Twitter, into training camp when in the last year, when Kirk made it abundantly clear that he was not vaccinated and he was not going to get vaccinated. And, you know, he had a bad press conference where he's talking about, guys, you know, I'll get plexiglass and I'll put it all around me and I'll be in this bubble. And it was very awkward. And, you know, the vax or non-vax conversation, even 10 months ago, just unbelievably hot. And he was right in the middle of it. You know, there are people who don't like him in the first place. So he was savaged in Hannibal Lecter-like fashion. Now, then we go and we play the games. And he plays 2 months, kind of like an MVP. He's about as good as any quarterback in the NFL. Well, now he's helping people cash bets, and he's helping their fantasy team. So it's crickets. You don't hear crap. Then near the end of the season, we're about to go to Green Bay. He gets bit. So he has COVID, and he has to skip it, and Mannion's going to be the quarterback, and the game was a disaster. Well, he gets killed again. So I'm like, where were you those 2.5, 3 months when he was lighting everything up? You didn't hear anything until it goes against, mostly politically, what you feel. And, man, it just – yeah,
and it's crazy because Kirk and I just got off a show right before we hopped on, like just an hour before, talking about hot takes. And one of my hot takes is Kirk Cousins will finish as a top 10 fantasy QB, and it's not that hot takey. He finishes QB 11, QB 11, QB 11, QB 13, QB 6, QB 8. He is a very consistent quarterback, and I think that the Vikings can do a lot if they can unleash a lot of that talent that they have in that roster already. Justin Jefferson is one of the best, if not, I would make an argument, the best wide receiver and possibly in the league. I'm a very big Jefferson fan. I know, Vegas has this team set at 8.5 wins. What are we thinking on that? And I think we'll end it on that, so I don't keep you all freaking night. But 8.5.
No, we're good. We'll beat Green Bay week 1. And then I love our schedule. I mean, seriously, from a this is going to be what the 20th season I've traveled, and there's a lot of sitting on buses and sitting on planes on tarmacs and waiting for players and coaches and everything to get squared away. And, it sometimes all that's gold is not glittering. And, but like when I come to Detroit, people will mock Detroit, because of the cliched whatever that they'll think of Detroit. But I mean, I don't care if we stay in Dearborn. I don't care if we stay at that wonderful little Henry Hotel across from that mall, or the big circular hotel, down the street from Greektown. You can find joy in any road city. And I love coming to Detroit. I like shooting dice at Greektown Casino.
I love it.
And I like the area around there. But our schedule really is cool. Like in the preseason, we go to Las Vegas, and we go to Denver. And my daughter is going to be a sophomore at CU Denver first week, the week that we're there. So I get to be with her, and I get out to Denver about 5 or 6 times a year because KFAN lets me do part of my radio show from KOA in Denver. So that's really cool. And I love Denver.
That's awesome. My brother went to college in Fort Collins.
And I love my daughter. So we're at Vegas and we're at Denver in the preseason. I mean, that's A+. And then like London is early in the season against New Orleans. We got those division games early, and a lot of them are winnable. Then mid-October, we're at Miami, which is super cool. Got a couple of cold ones at the end. We got 3 in a row at home in the second part of the schedule. We have Belichick on Thanksgiving, which I've called Vikings games since 2002, and I've never called a victory against New England. We've had tight games. I mean, we've gotten killed by them. But that'll be fun. And then your beloved New York Giants.
And I'll be there. I already booked. I will be there. I'm very excited.
Amen. You would say Saquon Barkley, Danny Dimes, and some of the more prominent players. I would say Carter Coughlin. Now Carter, where I live, he went to high school, and I've known the Coughlins for many, many years. Carter Coughlin is salt of the earth. He is a wonderful human being, and his father Bob is terrific. I do church related things with them. I have a podcast called Faith and Goal. Carter was like the guest three podcasts ago. Very learned on the Bible, very learned on football, very upstanding, straightforward guy. So, man, I just can't wait to embrace Carter in his first game in his home state. Against his favorite team growing up, the Minnesota Vikings. So, yeah, that's when I think Giants, it now goes Carter Coughlin 1, Smalls 2.
Not too shabby, right? And I'll have to make sure. I'll have to decide. Maybe I'll have to switch it and bring my Vikings jacket and wear my Giants jersey and not as I'll have to see how I do it this time around. It'll be hard. I'll have to, of course, Giants is my team, and it'll be hard to see, you have
we'll handle that.
I was having this affair a little bit with the Minnesota Vikings because I'm all in on them. I'm so freaking excited for this team. I think it's going to be a absolute awesome season for them. They're on the up. It's time. They're, the Vikings are due. The fans deserve it. I'm very excited.
It's been time for 60 years.
I know. Well, now it's really, really, really time. I think the Vikings and the Lions are on a good spot, in a good place. You get to play the NFC East, not a great division either. So they're in a good spot. Why don't you give me one? Why don't you give me one hot take? It's been like the thing of my day. Give me one.
4-3 Carolina, third period.
See?
I'm just kidding. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, God. I'm like, every time. Don't. I take my hair down and I bet the money line, and this is what happens.
You should have given the goal and a half for like plus 210 and that bad boy. Small's coming up big.
Jeez, at least I was on show, so I don't have to check and see if I lost. I'll probably just ignore it for a little bit so I can avoid the heartbreak there.
All right.
I appreciate you coming on.
Anytime.
This has been fantastic, and I'm excited. The NFC North is done. This is awesome. We just finished it. Couldn't have finished it on a higher note. But have anything cool coming up? Where can people find you in these upcoming days? You're everywhere.
I never gave you that record prediction. I hate record predictions.
Me too.
Doing what you do, and things are ascending with you. So, the more that you can get out there with records and be right, as you're learning in this game, you either want to be completely wrong or completely right. There's no in between. Because that's what's going to draw people. But like doing a radio show, I generally do a record prediction after training camp. But it's very hard because of the injuries, but simply for Stephanie Smalls,
woohoo!
I will do a late May Minnesota Vikings record prediction. And I'm going to go conservative this year because everything is so new. So my conservative estimate would be 14-3. We're going to have an off week in the first round of the playoffs. Let's go.
Let's go. Skull. I love it. Thank you so much for coming on. I go to the Browns tomorrow. The NFC North is done. We couldn't have ended on a higher note. I wanted to end with the Vikings because I'm all in on this team. I cannot wait. If you guys have not checked out Paul Allen, you guys are missing out. I don't know what you're doing living under a rock. This was fantastic. Thank you so much. I'll see you guys tomorrow.